Hey everyone, this is part two of The Truth About College. It's part of a three-part series going into some of the numbers, some of the issues and problems associated with college education these days. So in part one, if you haven't watched that yet, make sure you go do that before you watch this one. And in part one, I'd basically go through the traditional idea of a parent paying for their children's education because of how much it costs these days. It has a huge impact on the parents' overall financial stability, security, and retirement income. So I go in and show just a hypothetical example and what the true cost associated with putting a few kids through colleges. Today we're going to get into just the basic math and economics behind the value of a college education. So looking at what it costs versus what it gets you. So cost as far as money is concerned, and then what you receive as far as an income associated with the expenses of life. Part three is the part where we go into the solution, so you don't have to jump off a bridge. And it really, I guess the overarching theme is going to be an Austrian economics idea, which is creative destruction, which was originally it's been before Schumpeter, but Schumpeter really coined this term creative destruction, which is through a bad circumstance or a bad experience or a market fallout or something negative that happens financially, there's typically the human element associated with it, which solves the problem. And it's happened a million times in the past, and it will happen again. And it is happening associated with the problems that are staring us right in the face as far as what college is doing to America. Okay, so let's kind of let's get into it. So basically, we're going to go through just the idea behind why college education is so expensive these days. First thing I want to do is, and hopefully throw your computer out the window once you start seeing me drawing this stuff. But I'm going to reference the idea behind supply and demand when it comes to economics. And so if what I'm about to draw out is just fuzzy and cloudy and doesn't make sense, then I encourage you to go to a website which is absolutely amazing. But it's called Khan Academy, and you can if you have an iPad, you can download the Khan Academy app for iPad. You can go to YouTube, and there's literally thousands of videos on most subjects that incorporate numbers. And so Solomon Khan does a lot of different things associated with geometry and algebra and physics, and he gets into economics. And so he has a really good explanation of supply and demand. And he's really good at explaining it, and you can go back and you can rewind it. He uses pictures, he uses colors. It does an incredible job. So if you guys cannot kind of get your mind around the idea of supply and demand, definitely check out Khan Academy for further education in relation to the concept of supply and demand. But they are vital. I can't say how vitally important these two things are, because they're associated with any price you pay for anything. So we're going to go into college education and look at how supply and demand is creating this disturbance in prices associated with college education, but also with the high unemployment and the poor wage associated with a college degree. All right, so I think we can all agree that a few things are going on. Number one, tuition prices are going up. Okay, whether it's a state school or a private university, tuition's going up. So we're going to answer and go through just the simple logic of why tuition is going up. Okay, we also have unemployment of college graduates going up. Now you have kind of two figures. You have unemployment, complete unemployment, and then you have underemployment. underemployment. Okay, so we're gonna go through. So underemployment is basically I'm a college graduate and I graduated with a degree in biology and I'm working at a call center. That's kind of underemployment. Okay, and the other thing is the wage. Okay, in a sense, is going down. So the wage associated. Now, last year it did climb. It went from like 43,000 to 45,000. But if you look at inflation, that you can argue that wages are going down. So why are wages, as far as the percentage of increase in wage, why is it going down? And finally, why student loan debt? Okay, so student loan debt is climbing. Right now, there's about $1 trillion of outstanding student loans, and the default rates. I guess we can kind of categorize the default rate into here as well. But the default rates of student loans is also on the rise. Now, the reason why that's really important is because if you default on a student loan, it's not something you can discharge in bankruptcy. And they're working at President Obama, and there's some things that are being worked on so that there's some things that a student can do, but I'm not going to get into that today. All right, so let's just get into the idea of supply and demand and how it relates to these four things. And I have none other but our resident economist, connoisseur, accountant, math guy. What other titles do you want?
Oh, yeah, I'll take any you can give me.
Okay, so I have Brad Gibb, who's one of our experienced advisors with me to talk about the idea of supply and demand and make it as easy to understand as possible. So let's go through a few of these phenomenons. I think the best way to do this would be to use some sort of an association that everybody is familiar with. And I'm going to use the housing crisis of 2008 as an example. Okay, so there's two things that occurred in 2008. First, you had kind of a credit crisis, and then you had a almost complete collapse of the real estate market, and it was primarily driven by an unnecessary demand for real estate. Okay, and the reason is I'm going to use two reasons, which are going to correlate to student loans and college. First one was a social expectation. Okay, it was the American dream to own real estate, to own property. I mean, if you owned a home, you made it. So there's a social expectation of I own property. You go back to why one of the founding principles of our country was private property, because back in Europe, not many people were able to own property. Okay. So, and I think it was John Locke, life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. It wasn't, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which Jefferson kind of coined, but it was the original quote was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Anyway, so you had the social expectation. People wanted to buy their own home, have their own residence, and so forth. And then the second that was driving this demand was the access to financing. Okay, so access to loans. People with bad credit, people with low incomes could qualify for these massive mortgages. All right, so let's draw out just a simple, and you guys hopefully watch some of the Khan Academy material, but just a simple supply and demand curve. Let's scroll down here a little bit. So on this, on the x-axis, we're going to have price. Y, we're going to have quantity. Okay, so this is price and then quantity. Okay, and we're going to draw out the demand curve to begin. Okay, so what does this line mean? Okay, it means that the higher the price, the less that's going to be demanded. Okay, the lower the price, the more is going to be demanded. Okay, so that's a demand curve.
And this is from the consumer's perspective.
From the consumer's perspective.
If it's higher relative to what we think it should be, we're going to buy less. If it's lower, if it's on sale, we're going to buy.
Bingo. Now, thank you for the clarification. Now we're going to look at supply. Okay, here's the supply curve. So this is from so what's the opposite of a consumer? You need two parties in a transaction. You have the person buying, person selling.
This would be from the person selling standpoint.
All right. So the higher the price, the more this seller is going to provide, the more they're going to supply.
Yep.
Okay, because they're going to make more money. Okay, the lower the price, the lower they're going to supply. All right, so that makes sense. Then you have what's called price equilibrium, which is where the seller is willing to sell and where the buyer is willing to buy. Pretty simple.
Yep.
Okay, so what happened with housing? So first off, you have this social expectation. The social, I have to buy a house. I have a job. I have kids. I don't want to rent and pay a landlord money. I want to build equity. I want to have my own property. I want to be able to paint the way I want to paint. I want to be able to do in the bathroom whatever I do in the bathroom. I mean, you.
Yep.
You have that the social expectation of doing.
And that's what pre-ran and really started the first wave of this demand was back in the late 90s. That was a big push, not just because we as a nation were becoming more successful and more kind of feeling entitled to this idea, but there were lots of social programs out there really pushing the idea that everybody, because a homeowner makes a better taxpayer, makes a better employee, makes a better everything, right? More stability to everything you have.
And there's statistics that show that if a person buys a house in this region, what it does to the economy because of the velocity of money. So anyway, all right, or the money multiplier. All right, so let's get into that demand. So how does demand go up? So demand's going to go up like this. Okay, so now you have an increase of demand. Okay, so if this is the same type of supply, I mean, if the person's selling same type of supply, okay, the more that's going to be provided, and then the higher the price is going to be. Okay, but let's go to the actual supplier. Okay, so this relates to the home builders, because at the time when this demand started to go up, there was only a finite amount of homes. So builders were like, "Oh, I need to get in on the action. Okay, I need to go develop this huge plot of land and take out debt and provide homes."
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and where it didn't make economic sense to build homes, on the outskirts of Las Vegas, where it was dry and hard to get water through and not as pretty, it didn't make sense to. But now, if a builder can say, "Well, I can sell it for this price, I'm going to build."
Exactly.
Right.
And then you have a lot of the cookie cutters, because it's like you only have a couple of designs and you can just spit out homes on like a conveyor belt.
Right.
Okay. All right, so what happened to supply? So supply, we'll use red to do that. Okay, so supply started to shift out. Okay, so started to shift out. What happens to that price? Okay, prices go down a little bit.
Or it would have, it would have had that tendency to push you back toward that original equilibrium.
Exactly. Now, in addition to this, what started to happen was financing was available to everybody. This is that led to the collapse. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But the financing, the access to money from people that would otherwise not have access to money. So it's like if the individuals in the marketplace had to put down 20%, you're only going to have a finite amount of people. But now if you don't have to put down anything, anybody can go get a house. Okay, so the access to easy credit allowed for an additional spike in demand. Okay,
Yep.
so
Low down, easy monthly payments.
Exactly.
Right?
So that kind of led right out here. And then what collapsed? Okay, what collapsed is you had these derivatives and you had all these, this huge bubble. Prices were going crazy, and the credit system basically faltered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it dried up and it almost completely collapsed overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happened in that regard? So now you have this demand associated, basically going from here, kind of coming all the way back, maybe even less than what was demanded previously.
Yeah, not only did we go back to where you had to put 20% down and so forth, but now all these people that had bought a home that shouldn't have, now they can't because their credit, their financing might be wiped out. So they're now, even people that maybe could have bought a home, now can't.
Yeah. So
it went back, pendulum swing, worse than it was before.
Exactly, and that's where you had this. The last couple of years, you had this huge buy cycle or buy signal, I guess you can say, for investors, because you had people foreclosing, and banks have all these REOs, and it's like they're trying to get rid of them and selling them for less than the cost to build. Yep. And that's where there's a huge pool of renters out there now. So that could be another supply and demand curve, just showing why. It's so awesome for an investor to get. It wasn't good. It's kind of good still, but was good at that point. Mm-hmm. But what you're starting to see, which is really interesting, is those that did have a foreclosure in 2009 or 2008, are now able to get credit. So the demand is actually going up, which is affecting investors and also affecting prices. So it's really interesting how this all comes around full circle. All right, we're not here to talk about real estate, but this is an example that most people are familiar with because it was all over the news and still all over the news.
And seeing the two impacts is going to help us with looking at education. Remember, there was first a social expectation that everybody bought a house, and then financing came behind it to really push that wave up.
Okay, so now the social expectation is you have a scarlet letter on your chest if you don't go to college, right? Yep. Everybody's supposed to go to college. I don't know. It's political rhetoric. It's what's pushed in school. I mean, it's just that's what you do, and if you don't do it, you're a delinquent.
Yep. You wear a dunce hat around, and you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's for the rest of your life.
You got it. Yep. Okay, now, so that's the first drive. Second drive is, lo and behold, the access to student loans. Okay, and also access to third-party credit. Because I remember back when I was in school, you go the first day of school and you have these booths set up for Discover Card and American Express, and they give you all sorts of financing that way as well. So they get you two ways, student loans and with credit card financing.
And one thing to note, who was behind both systems of financing primarily? Who made it available where it wasn't otherwise available?
Government.
Yeah, it was subsidized.
It was
right?
subsidized.
So we had subsidized housing. We now have subsidized higher education.
FHA guarantees. You had
exactly,
and that's kind of what's pushing a lot of stuff today too. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because I mean they're these GSEs GSEs, government responsible enterprises. But yeah, there's this backstop with the government or the taxpayers there that in case it falls out. So that manipulates the cost of things as well.
That's how an abnormal amount of demand came about. The market, it was above and beyond what the market would have provided.
Okay, so same supply and demand. Okay, let's just go through that again. Okay, the demand side, which is the consumer or the potential student. Okay, the lower the price, the more is going to be demanded. Higher the quantity demanded. The higher the price, the less is going to be demanded in a perfectly free market. Okay, then you have the actual schools themselves. You have the universities, you have whether it's public or private, and then you have online schools. I mean, you have just any education that's considered
higher
credible.
Education.
You got it, higher education. Okay, so here's the supply. Okay, so obviously the more a person's willing to pay, the higher, the more that's going to be supplied, because colleges are going to come out of the woodwork. So if a person willing to pay $100,000, I'd quit this and go start a school. Right. So that's the idea behind supply and demand. So the lower the price, the less that's going to be supplied by universities. Okay. All right. So the social expectation, and another thing we can kind of throw on top of this is you look at demographic trends, and right now you have, I think the baby boomer generation is the most famous because it's all over the news, just because everybody in that demographic is on the news, right? They're the news anchor. They're the people that are the back end of it. They're the ones there
with all the problems. They're the ones that
you got it.
All the things.
That's all that we hear
through this.
You got it. So the baby boomer generation is a huge generation, almost 80 million. But nobody really is paying attention. You don't see much news about the up-and-coming generation that is bigger than the baby boomer generation.
Because didn't all the baby boomers have kids, which would lead to a larger demographic right behind.
Bingo. And they're the ones that are going into college right now. They're in college. You got it.
Yep.
Okay, so now you have this social expectation, which is you're a delinquent if you don't go to college, And then, so what's happening is demand is getting pushed up because of that.
Yeah.
Now, should every child go to college? No. I mean, you look at all the people that are really famous. I mean, whether it's the Bill Gates of the world or the Mark Zuckerbergs. I mean, they didn't finish school, and they're the most wealthy individuals in the world.
Yeah. Does a degree make you smart?
No, and it's
not necessarily.
And you can argue that it makes you dumber
in
too.
a lot of ways.
Okay. Anyway, so what that does is it's obviously pushing up the equilibrium price.
Yep.
The clearing price. Okay, without manipulation, okay, all things being equal, it should be right here. That should be the equilibrium price and quantity supplied.
Yep.
Okay, but it's pushing it up because of this social expectation. Kids are going to school that should not go to school. All right, and that's fine. It doesn't. You shouldn't have if you don't go to school. That's totally fine.
Right. It's breaking that social expectation.
Yeah.
It sounds harsh to say no. Some kids shouldn't. It's not the kids' fault or that they're not worthy of it. It's the market can't reward everybody going to college.
Yep, exactly.
That's more what it is.
Yep.
And so they're just, the market can't clear that many bachelor degrees and pay them what the cost of not going to school and taking out dental. There isn't enough market activity to clear all of that.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Yep. Okay, so what's happening with universities, right? You're having these online universities pop up out of everywhere. They're all over the place. They spend tons, billions of dollars each year on advertising, trying to get kids to sign up. Here's cheaper education. Here's online stuff. You can work and go to school at the same time. It's massive. That industry is massive right now.
Well, just last weekend I drove down to the college campus that I attended, and it seemed like while I was there, it was under perpetual construction. They were building a new building somewhere. They were changing something. Even when I went down there, half the campus seemed like it was surrounded by yellow tape because they were still building. Perpetually trying to add to keep up with the demand of what's going on. And then on top of that, they've got online admissions, as well as it felt like we were stacked on top of each other inside the classroom. Exactly. So they're trying to do all they can to bring on more seats in the classes each year.
Okay, so that's bringing the should, in all things being equal, should bring the price down. Okay, however, now you have this big thing, which is financing. Right now, there's $1 trillion of student loans outstanding. It's unreal, unreal. But outstanding student loans, $1 trillion. The default rates continue to go up, but the financing allows even more demand, because even though you have the social expectation, if there wasn't financing, there'd be a less of a demand. But now, because there's financing, kids are going into debt, parents are going into debt, families are going into debt to finance this, ridiculousness.
Same exact thing that happened with housing, right? As soon as there were large enough people who felt that the twinge to buy a house or to go to college, they've now clamored loud enough to say, well, we need financing for this. We can't do what you're telling us we need to do. So in comes the financing.
You got it.
Backing behind
so
it.
Here is the financing. I don't think the financing is going to go away. No. Okay, I think looking at financing, it's kind of one of these promises that political figures have made, and it's here to stay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm. It hasn't collapsed yet. I mean, we don't know what's going to cause it to collapse. But here are my thoughts, and these are the last things we're going to talk about. I think there's going to be a collapse of the social side of things. People are going to realize that first, the unemployment rate's high because I go to school, I put on all this debt, and I don't even have a high probability of getting a job. Okay, and if I even do get a job, the average salary does not cover my living expenses. Okay, so here's some things just to kind of prove all of this out. All right, so what you're seeing on your screen right now is just a snapshot. Okay, it's a snapshot of the average salary out of school, and this comes from, and actually it's gone up. It was like 41 or 42,000 for 2012. 2013 is about 45,000, but it comes from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So NACE, N-A-C-E. So it says just under 45,000 is the average salary. So I went in and said, okay, the averages, let's look at the other averages. Because when you go to school, your parents are like, sayonara, you got a degree, you're on your own, you're off mom and dad's,
They should anyway.
Yeah, and they should. Okay, so here's how things break down. So first off, let's look at your favorite subject in the world, taxes. Okay, this is when kids really start to see that they definitely pay quite a bit to our Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. Reality check here.
Okay, so let's go to taxes. So I'm not going to get into a huge discussion on taxes, but I put in $45,000 single, really no deductions, just because you're renting. You're here. So if you scroll down and look at the amount of tax that's paid, okay, it's broken down right here. So $893. These are your federal marginal brackets, and then there's your state tax if you're in a 5% state tax bracket, which is the average in the country right now. So it comes down to about $88.66 in total income taxes that you pay, both federal and state. Okay, so there's that. That's about $740 per month. Okay, now you have payroll taxes. So what are payroll taxes? People ask. Payroll taxes is basically your Social Security and your Medicare taxes. Okay, right now Medicare is at 1.45 and Social Security is at 6.2. So that brings you to 7.65 right there. Now you have $11,000, $12,000 or so in over $12,000 in just in just taxes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now your housing. I went and did averages everywhere. I have sites here so you can kind of look at these different things that I'm referencing. But if you look at the average rent right now, it's about $700 per month. So most of these figures came from Numbeo. I think it is Numbeo.com. But they're basically deriving everything from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a government entity. All right. So anyway, so looking at rent, average is $700. Utilities. The internet is 45. Average is 45 for high-speed internet because everybody, college grads these days.
That, right?
I was talking to a client yesterday, and it's like he went to Europe for a month, and he's like, my kids, they were just pulling their hair out because we were in these different places in Europe, and they were trying to figure out where the wireless internet was. So every kids that are graduating these days need the internet. Yep. Okay, so averages as far as the other utilities that are paid, $165 a month. Then you look at average food expenses. Okay, so I looked at the cheap plan. Cheap plan was $355 per month, and that was from USDA. They came out with those statistics. They showed conservative or penny pinchers, and then they showed like the high lifestyle. So $355 was on the low end. Health insurance. Okay, average health insurance came from ehealthinsurance.com, and that is $279 a month. Cell phone, $71 a month. That came from JD Power and Associates. Clothes and entertainment, again from Numbeo, and this is a pretty familiar. So transportation is one of those things where you can do public transit, and these days it's interesting that the younger demographic is very highly pro public transport. Okay, but so it's crazy. Just the average auto expense per year, per month is $769,000 per year. So what do you see here? If these are the averages, if you want to drive a car and these are your average expenses, okay, you're making $45,000 and you are paying $45,804. Now, on top of this, you have the average student loan debt is going to be $35,000, which includes credit cards of the average individual. So here's the problem. Here is why there's going to be a social collapse of sorts, because people are going to realize, I'm doing this, I'm spending 40 years doing this, this is what I owe, and this is what I get. Okay, so here is where the wake-up call is going to come. And I'm not sure where the collapse is going to be. Is it going to be this housing crumble like what happened in 2008? Maybe not. Who really knows? But there is going to be a shift, and we're already starting to see it. There are books that are coming out. You have all these amazing inventions and websites and services that are being provided online, which is a byproduct of kids seeing the writing on the wall. But hopefully this video, this part 2, the purpose was to show the math and numbers of the traditional college expectations and why they are completely unrealistic. In part 3, we're going to get into the solutions, what you can do, not just from a parent standpoint, from a child standpoint, and how you can avoid falling into the trap that most people are finding themselves in. Any last words, Brad?
Yeah, just watch that part 3 because we just spent this time bursting everybody's bubble, but there is good news.
Don't jump off the roof yet.
If we have to know the problem before we know how we can solve it. So that's what we spent time doing now. Next time is going to really give us some tangible ways of how we can help ourselves avoid the pitfalls or the catastrophe that's looming.
Okay, so look for part 3. Thanks, everyone.